Hey there, Grumpy Old Fart here. This is a compilation video of some of my greatest hits. Hope y'all enjoy them.
Lycanthropes. Okay, who doesn't love a good werewolf story? It's so embedded in our culture that I don't think it's possible to find anyone in the world that does not know, at the very least, what a werewolf is. Ever since the Wolfman leapt out on the screen way back in 1913, the world has loved being scared by these creatures. The first book of this genre, The Man-Wolf, was published in 1831. But wolves are not the only animal types people are cursed with. Check out my video, What the Werebear Wears. That's a funny one. That kid was awesome. Collectively, lycanthropes, these type of creatures, are called lycanthropes. Werebears, wereboars, wererats, weretigers, and werewolves are all listed in the Advanced Dungeons & Dragons Monster Manual. As a dungeon master, you have to figure out the alignment of the individual afflicted with this lycanthropy. Each monster, when transformed, has a specific alignment. However, if a lawful good person is infected with lycanthropy and transforms into a chaotic evil werewolf, how's that going to play with his conscience, considering his moral outlook on life? A werewolf makes a terrifying monster for the player characters to face, but it's even worse when the player characters, presumably of good alignment, discover that the flip side of the vicious beast is the aged village elder who helps everyone and is loved by all, or is the fair maiden damsel in distress who could never hurt a fly. Or maybe it's a little kid, you know? Lycanthropes create tons of opportunities for a dungeon master to stretch the roleplay talents of the player characters. Will they out the victim because people afflicted by lycanthropy are victims unless they're normally evil bastards? If a good person is infected with lycanthropy, they are a victim. Evil people afflicted with lycanthropy may enjoy it. I don't know. Will they kill the monster? Will the player characters kill the monster? Will they sacrificing the good guy who has no control over the situation? Will they try to find a cure? The possibilities and questions of morality are endless. I have played in games where the dungeon master runs lycanthropes as just bloodthirsty monsters. And when they're transformed, that's pretty much what they are. A werewolf is a bloodthirsty monster. It is chaotic evil, and it just wants to kill and maim and eat and breed, and that's what it does. But when they do that, they are missing out on such a broad tapestry that they could use with the amount of moral conflagration that can go into such a storyline. I don't understand how any dungeon master couldn't use lycanthropes of any kind as a moral part of the story, as a moral to make his player characters question the morality of killing the beast. If they don't know it's a lycanthrope, for whatever reason, and they kill it, it reverts back to human form. And then they go, holy crap, we just killed somebody. That can play on their psyche. If they know and kill it, they're knowingly killing. It's one thing to accidentally kill somebody. It's another thing to knowingly kill somebody. Even if that, a victim, even if that person, moonlights as a vicious beast. My contention is, don't treat these critters, these monsters, as just another encounter. To do so would waste such an opportunity for player character growth and player growth. You give them the opportunity to roleplay. Most players will want to roleplay. Give them the opportunity to roleplay a moral ambiguity or a moral conundrum, and your player characters will thrive on that. Unless, of course, they're evil, in which case they'll make soup. It's just the way it is. You got to know your players. It's just the way it is. Herd animals. I know this may sound stupid, but one of the things people misunderstand about encounters is that any encounter can be used as a learning experience. Any encounter can be used... The most innocuous little encounter can turn into something dangerous. When you use this type of an encounter on your players, it makes the players... It takes the fire out of them. It makes them really, really be skeptical about everything. And that's kind of what you want. You want them to fear the unknown, even if it's a herd of deer. During the course of a game, player characters will eventually run out of food. Rangers and other fighter types, and maybe even thieves and wizards, will want to hunt. Hunting is awesome. There are tons of small game varieties like rabbits and birds for them to choose from. A bow or basic snares will feed them easily. But then there's the big game that will feed the entire party for a week or more. Predators like bears and wolves and mountain lions are harder to kill and tend to be rather aggressive. Most other big game like deer, elk, antelope, giraffe, buffalo, etc. are fairly easy to find, and 2 to 3 characters should be fairly able to take down one pretty easily. The problem comes when these herd animals sense danger and the fear factor kicks in. No pun intended for the show with Joe Rogan. Fear, if you're not familiar with it, fear is an acronym. Forget everything and run. And if you're in the military, the F is for something else. Forget everything and run. When you are faced with a stampede, remember these critters are at least man-sized. I have rarely had to adjudicate such circumstances because generally the herd runs away from the PCs. However, if the player characters are caught in the path of a stampede, it can be horrific. If you're not familiar with what happens to animals or people in a stampede who are run down by a stampede of, for example, cattle, I've seen that. I have seen the effects of a stampede on an animal that was caught in one. It is not pretty. Being trampled by dozens of cattle is horrific. I've seen that firsthand. I do not like it. I know how it works. Here's how I run it in the game. If the player characters cannot find cover, up a large tree, behind a boulder, something to divert the herd, then they need to roll a d6, and that's how many animals run them down. Each animal does 2d6 damage. The player character can make a savings throw versus paralyzation for half damage. That's how I run stampedes. You should give the player characters every opportunity to avoid being run down by the stampede. If they have a weird idea or some sort of an odd plan, or if they luck out and there's something there that they can use to get away, allow them that opportunity. Let them make a dexterity check. Let them make a savings throw. Let them do something, some sort of an ability check. I remember reading a story when I was a kid. It was either Daniel Boone or Davy Crockett. I can't remember which one. Maybe one of those two. Maybe somebody else. But I'm pretty sure it was Daniel Boone or Davy Crockett. There was a stampede of buffalo coming, and he shot the lead one and then ran over and jumped down next to it. The herd leaped over, they went around it, or they leaped over the dead critter, and they were leaping over him along with it. So that was pulling something out of your ass. And that happens a lot. When you're faced with a big enough stampede that you can't get around, can't get away from, that's a viable thing. Don't mention it, but if they come up with it, give them the opportunity to do that. You need to give the player characters the option to come up with a wild plan, because stampedes are, oh my god, deadly. If 6 critters or more run over somebody, they're going to grind them into the damn dirt. There's not much going to be left. That's all I'm saying. Herd animals that get scared and stampede are as dangerous as any monster you find in the monster manual. Keep that in mind. I did a story a while back, Sometimes Dinner Gets You, about my friend Irene and the water buffalo. And there was one where the group went hunting and they fired an arrow and pissed off the deer, and the deer came and attacked, followed them back to camp, and killed the entire party. I did one where the wolves attacked the party, at night and killed the whole group. Sometimes it doesn't have to be a big bad monster to kill the whole party. I've had TPKs with normal animals. Just keep that in mind. So, don't underestimate the herd animals. Right? There's a lot of them. Even the most innocuous critter in numbers can be dangerous. The gibbering mouther. Yeah, that's a weird damn name, I understand. Okay, as a dungeon master, if you want to run something different against your players in your game, the Monster Manual, Monster Manual 2, and the Fiend Folio, they have tons of options. Have a field day, knock yourself out. You want to find something that's obviously appropriate to your game, and if it's an underground setting, yeah, you got tons of stuff to choose from. You really do. If you want to go completely weird and blow their minds, I give you the Gibbering Mouther. This is from the Monster Manual 2 on page 69 and 70. If run properly, the Mouther can be very dangerous to a group of player characters of moderate level, 4th to 6th level. First off, take note of the gibbering part of the Gibbering Mouther. This thing emits a cacophony of gibbering sounds that tends to confuse people if they fail their save. The confusion caused by this creature can be devastating. If the player characters fail their save, they will be affected in a manner such as that they'll either wander confused, they'll attack the nearest creature, even themselves. It can act as a fear spell and make them run away, or they can just stand there and be stunned, and that's most likely what's going to happen. It's a D8, and 2 to 5 is stand there stunned. So, every round, a new savings throw is needed, and a string of bad luck can literally be a player character's doom. Add that to the fact that the Mouther looks like a lump of earthy material, so it can look like the floor, a lump in the floor or whatever. Player characters can literally overlook it if they're not looking real close. The surprise attack of a gibbering Mouther can be devastating. The Mouther has an armor class of 1, so it is difficult to hit. The spittle of this beast bursts into a bright flare, and PCs, player characters who fail a save, can be blinded for a round. This will allow the thing to move and assume a different form, so that it can hide again. A character who fails and is covered by a Mouther is in for a bad time, because this thing has about a dozen mouths, and it'll eat them, literally. Years ago, I was playing in my friend George's game. George was freaking nuts. He ran good games because he put in things that just, it was crazy. There were 3 players. Myself, I was running a fighter. Larry was running a cleric, and Jesse was running a thief. There were other players, but like idiots, they'd insisted that we split the party. We were 4th to 5th level, and splitting the party is never good. Here's a bit of advice for you players. Never split the party. Always stay together. Your chances of survival are so much better. You hear horror stories of the thief that runs off to go steal something on his own and he never comes back. Well, guess what? That's on him. Never split the party. All right. The 3 players, myself and 2 others, Jesse and Larry, ran into a gibbering Mouther, and we all failed our saves versus the gibbering. Jesse's thief stood there stunned, as did my fighter. Larry's cleric wandered off confused. Excuse me. I got a tickle in my throat. Bear with me. So Jesse and I were standing there stunned, and Larry's cleric wandered off. The Mouther attacked Jesse's thief, who fell down, and the Mouther moved over him completely and began devouring him. The next round, I failed my save again, and I stood there stunned. I wasn't able to do anything. Larry made his save and spent the round finding his way back to us. The next round, Larry and I both failed our saves, and the Mouther devoured Jesse's thief. The next round, we failed our saves again, and the Mouther attacked me. My fighter fell down, and it enveloped me as Larry stood there stunned. The next round, Larry made his save and saw the dead thief. He chose to investigate the dead body because the mound of rock there looked like a mound of rock. He didn't know I was under it. So he investigated the dead thief's body. Next round, the cleric failed his save and wandered off again. He happened to wander off a cliff. We all died, all three of us. As you can see, gibbering mouthers can be deadly to a party given the right circumstances. If you really want to weird your players out, you can do far worse than a gibbering mouther. For moderate level characters, one of these critters can be pretty nasty. Especially if it's a smaller party or a big party that's split up into groups like we did. It can be nasty because the bigger the party, the greater chance somebody's going to make their save. If everybody fails their save, they're screwed. It's just a matter of time. So, if you fancy yourself a devious and vicious dungeon master, have I got a monster for you. If you're a player and you run across a symbiotic jelly in your game, you can rest assured that either your dungeon master has a lot of faith in you, or that the dungeon master hates your guts and wants your character dead. Just kidding. A symbiotic jelly is exactly that. It requires another creature to be at its most deadly. Read up on the symbiotic jelly in the Fiend Folio on page 85. In my opinion, the most fearsome part of this creature's modus operandi, the part that makes it the most deadly, is its illusion power. The illusion power makes its charmed partner appear like a different creature that is much weaker. This is the part that got most of our party killed back in 1991. I was playing in Jerry's game. There were 8 of us, and we were traveling through a mountainous area. We were seeking shelter from an impending storm, and our ranger found a cave perfect for our needs. Upon entering the cave, we saw a fantastic treasure packed and piled in the back. And curled up in front of the treasure was a crocodile. The whole setup looked like easy pickings. You kill a crocodile, get a nice meal, and pick what you want out of the treasure. Our 8 4th level player characters drew our weapons and prepared to dispatch the lone reptile. 4 rounds later, 3 of us were dead, another 2 were unconscious, and the rest of us were scrambling to escape with our lives. Yeah. The symbiotic jelly, what it does is it goes into a cave. Long story short, it goes into a cave, goes up into the very top, and hides up in the ceiling, and it blends in so it can't be seen. It's really hard to see. And using telepathy, it finds a really badass creature to come in and inhabit the cave. Symbiotic jellies subsist on, I guess, the death energy, the psychic energy of dying creatures. It's just weird. This is an insidious creature. Anyway, this big bad creature comes into the cave and telepathically the jelly charms it and convinces it to stay. When other creatures come into the cave, well, hang on, let me backtrack here. So you've got this big creature in the cave, right? Then it casts 2 illusions. The first illusion makes this big badass creature seem like something much weaker. And then, of course, it creates the illusion of this big treasure in the back, and that's the bait. So, party of player characters enter. They see this wimpy little creature guarding this badass treasure. Oh, easy pickings. Boom. Next thing you know, they're toast. As it turns out, said lowly crocodile, in our experience, was in reality an 8-headed hydra. Such is the power of a symbiotic jelly. As far as I know, the jelly, the hydra, and our 5 comrades are still in that cave. Well, their bones are, I guess. No doubt our comrades' bones have been picked clean. We did not return. Next time you're looking for an unusual critter to plague your players with, consider a symbiotic jelly. That is, if you think they can handle it, because this is not something you turn loose on new players. It's not something you turn loose on even moderate players. This thing is just insidious. This thing, I've used it once in all my 40 years of running Dungeons and Dragons, 40 plus years. I have used a symbiotic jelly once. I've encountered them once. They're a bit nasty. I mean, you got to have really powerful player characters in your game and players who know what they're doing. You know what I'm saying? And the illusions this thing casts are really strong. I think, as I recall, you save at -7. It's just nasty. You read up on it in the Fiend Folio. Just read up on it. I can't think of a much more insidious creature to turn loose on your players. Dust Diggers. As a dungeon master, sometimes it can be difficult to find a monster to run against your players that hasn't been done, redone, or redone 100 times before. Especially when the player characters reach 8th or 10th level. By then, the characters have seen and encountered a bunch of different critters, and it's hard to challenge them with new things. Oh no, another dragon. However, will we 6th, 8th level PCs deal with this thing? Sarcasm intended. The next time they are making a trek across the desert, try this. The Dust Digger. You can find it in the Monster Manual 2 on page 61. This thing is huge. It hides under the sand where prey crosses the sand above it. It attacks. So it hides under the sand, and when somebody's crossing above it, it attacks. One of the more insidious aspects of this creature is its ability to create an illusion of a bubbling pool of water in the desert sands above it. This attracts any living thing in the desert. Because when you're in the desert, if you've ever been in the desert, if you know anything about desert survival, water is a necessity. You have to have it. Anything with a mind that sees a pool of water will go to the pool of water. Player characters have a mind, at least they're supposed to. Player characters in the desert see an oasis and they immediately head for it. Few, if any, will think to disbelieve this illusion. So it's got reasonable bait. One of the more dangerous things about it is that dust diggers travel in groups of 1 to 20. So you can have a very large area infested with these things. They can easily handle a party of player characters. So it's not a matter of their level. It's a matter of if they're all they got to do is walk there. One thing is that the dungeon master will need to plot the exact location of each and every dust digger in the area. This will prevent, but I was over there, or my character never walked over there, I was this way. I was over this way. That sort of thing. You got to know exactly where they are, and you got to know exactly where your player characters are. Now, the pool of water makes it easier because, I'm going to get in that pool of water. Well, boom, you're there. You can't argue with that. I'm going to go drink from the water. You're there. You can't argue with it. You were there. You said you went there. The pool of water makes excellent bait, especially in the desert. Make sure you know exactly where these critters are using map references so that when a player character walks over one, there is no question. The last thing you want to say with a player to say is, well, that's not fair. He cheated. As a dungeon master, that is one of your worst nightmares. because then you have to explain the rules, explain the critter, explain. It just kills the mood of the game, you know. These things are not much more intelligent than animals, so play them accordingly. They're not going to have any real advanced tactics. However, they're not. They do have a sense of self-preservation. They only move at night, so you know. And if you're having trouble imagining what these things look like, imagine the Sarlacc from Return of the Jedi, but a lot smaller. It's not going to swallow a vehicle. They're about the size big enough to swallow a full-size human character. That's about it. But like I said, they travel in groups of 1 to 20, so they can be quite nasty. In groups, they can be very nasty. And read up on the different armor classes and their attack methods, because you have to know that in order and compare them to the defenses that the player characters have. You want to challenge the players. You don't want to rob them of their abilities. So just, you know, compare the two and make reasonable judgment calls. At any rate, the next time you're having problems finding a critter to run against player characters, if they're in the desert, consider a dust digger. You could do far worse. The Trapper. As a dungeon master, it falls to you to find fun and devious ways to challenge your players. Any warlord can put a squad of warriors in a room or hallway to ambush them, and many of them will do just that. Many warlords are just that basic, and that's cool. But what if this warlord has the means to contact, negotiate with, and employ monsters? I did a video on a beholder a while back. Go check that out. That being able to employ monsters opens up an entire galaxy of possibilities. Enter the Trapper. Imagine the scene. The group enters a section of hallway and they see a chest over there. They creep over to check it out, and suddenly the floor then envelops them and crushes them to death. The ones that survive the crushing suffocate. Yeah, trappers pretend to be the floor. They can even create protuberances that resemble chests or boxes, which lure their prey in. Then the trapper closes on them and crushes them. Read up on trappers on pages 95 and 96 in the Monster Manual. Don't forget that little bit that's on page 96 because it's important. Trappers even change their color to better camouflage themselves as the normal stonework of the area that they're in. They blend. They're like they're like chameleons. They blend. They're like the freaking predator. The crushing damage the creature does can be negated with a low armor class below 0. So essentially what it is, they do X amount of damage, but you add the armor of the character. So I want to say it's 4 points plus the armor. So if it's 4 and the armor class of the character is 6, they're taking 10 points around. If it's 4 and the armor class is -2, they're only taking 2 points around. You see what I'm saying? So it depending on the armor, the armor can help the player character survive the crushing. The problem is, regardless of the damage they take, player characters will be smothered to death within 6 rounds. So they have 6 rounds to find a way out of this. Otherwise, they're dead anyway. Trappers are indeed insidious. I was playing in my friend Kevin's game. Kevin was an excellent dungeon master, and he ran a great game. He passed away recently, and we all miss him. My thief picked the lock and opened the door. I peered in and saw a chest in the room. I slowly crept in, and the fighter, played by my good friend Larry, said, "I don't trust that room. It's just too easy." I said, "Well, what do you want me to do?" He replied, "Well, grab the chest and bring it over here." I tried to move the chest, but it was too heavy. Thinking the chest was filled with gold, the rest of the group charged in to help me carry it out. The entire floor of the room snapped closed on us, and we all died. It was a total party kill. Kevin was a devious so-and-so, and I really miss playing in his game. Read up on trappers. I'm sure you can find someplace in a dungeon somewhere in your world to place one of these horrific death dealers. The sad part is you can have a thief check for traps. get into the habit of asking to check for traps on what? The door, the floor, the wall, that kind of thing. If for whatever reason they fail to check for traps on the floor, or if they fail their roll to check for traps when they check the floor, the trapper will go unnoticed. I want to say it's 95% of the time. So you have to look that up to make sure, but I believe it's 95%. So that being said, there's no reason not to bebop into the room. Well, once you do, you're literally standing on the critter. You're in its mouth. All it's got to do is close the trap. You see what I'm saying? Trappers are indeed insidious. They are nasty. If you get a chance, read up on them and try to use them in your game, because your players are gonna shit a brick. That's all I'm saying. By far, the most aggravating monster to run player characters against is the rust monster. I've run tons of games over the years, and I've run a plethora of different monsters against player characters in my gaming experience. And in my opinion, the monster that most aggravates the players is the rust monster. You can find it on page 83 of the Monster Manual. One of the things that I make sure of in my games is to run economies very, very strictly. When a player character group goes into a town to spend gold, they find that their funding doesn't seem to go as far as they'd like. As a dungeon master, I haggle and I never settle for book price. The only time I let people buy directly from the book with the book prices is at character creation. After that, yeah, I haggle. And I never settle for book price. And if somebody wants to sell me an item, I never give them book price. I always sell for less. I buy for less and I sell for more, because that's smart business. I play my shop owners that way. I'm also relatively stingy with gold. Most of my player characters have a wealth of silver but very little gold. And platinum is very, very rare in my game. The arms and armor that the player characters purchase is very precious to them, because metalsmiths and shop owners do their best to get the best price for their goods. When a player character in my game secures a suit of plate mail armor, rest assured that they have earned it. Oh boy, have they earned it. So, when the player characters run into a rust monster in a dungeon somewhere, and it devours their favorite sword or that prized suit of plate mail armor, they feel it. It's a serious loss for their character. I've had a group of 4th level player characters turn and run away from a rust monster. All 6 of them just fled in panic. As a matter of fact, on one occasion, a rust monster completely randomly generated encounter snuck into camp and gorged itself on the PC's gear. This particular group managed to make it to 3rd level, staying in a town and never having to post guards. So when they ventured out into a local tower ruins, there was some ruins outside of town, including a tower, and there was some stuff going on. Somebody hired them to go check it out. They ventured out, and when they found a secret staircase down into some forgotten catacombs, they didn't think to post a sentry when they made camp. A rust monster found their camp and quietly began devouring their weapons and armor. By the way, if a player character sleeps in their armor, they can't get a restful sleep. Nobody can. There's not a person in existence that can sleep well in plate mail, chain mail, banded mail, or splint mail. Any kind of leather armor tends to chafe, so that's out too. I had each player character roll each round to see if they woke up, and by the time the cleric woke up, there was not a suit of metal armor or a metal weapon left. One player character had a longbow with arrows, another had a club, and one had a staff and sling. But the paladin and the cavalier were pissed. It even ate their coinage. It got into their money pouches. The worst part was that the rust monster left before the cleric woke up, so they didn't even have a chance to kill it. I would read up on the rust monster before you run it against your player characters. But if you do, I guarantee you that your players will not forget the encounter, especially if you run the economies in the game the way I think they're supposed to be run. A rust monster can cost the group a buttload in money because of simply having to replace items. Paladins and Cavaliers in my game avoid rust monsters like the plague. One of the most curious creatures that a dungeon master can throw at a group of players is a disenchanter. Most player characters don't really run across them very much, and for a dungeon master to put one of these things against a party, it's not insidious, it's not like they're really badass. They won't kill off a bunch of party members, but man, it's just mean. Nobody knows where disenchanters come from, nor even how their metabolism functions. As a matter of fact, the only real information known about disenchanters is the fact that they have the ability to detect and drain the magic from any magic item. They will turn magical items into normal items. This creature is the bane of most player characters because magic items, weapons, armor, wands, staves, rods, rings, etc. are prized by most players. Disenchanters can turn a +4 Vorpal weapon into a normal sword. They can turn a ring of wizardry into a gaudy bauble. They can turn a rod of lordly might into a fashionable walking stick. They can turn a wand of fireballs into an ornate stick. Read up on disenchanters on page 27 of the Fiend Folio. Now, I got to give a shout out to another dungeon master who is a very competent individual from what I've seen. The guy, he's on YouTube. You can watch him yourself. He goes by the title, The Old Warlock. And he has some really, really good videos. Go check him out, okay? I watched one of his videos the other day, and he brought up an interesting point for dungeon masters. As a dungeon master, this creature can be very useful in eliminating exceptionally powerful magic items that are unbalancing your game. A player character, for example, finds a mystical rod of whatever that allows them to defeat a specific bad guy. Unfortunately, that rod now allows him to easily and handily defeat most of the villains in your world, regardless of the fact that the rest of the group is bored to tears as that one player character does his thing. One disenchanter can fix that. And again, kudos to the Old Warlock for mentioning that in a video I watched a while back. Check out the Old Warlock for great advanced Dungeons and Dragons content. He puts out some really, really good stuff. In a lot of ways, it's better than mine. Years ago, a group that I was running encountered a disenchanter as a random encounter. And I promise it was a random encounter. The wizard in the group was surprised immediately. The whole group was, but the wizard was surprised as well. And the thing grabbed his Staff of the Magi right off the bat. And he lost it. The staff was gone. Initiatives were rolled. The fighter attacked with his +3 battle axe. He rolled bad and missed. The disenchanter then turned his battle axe into a normal battle axe. He ruined it. The cleric and the thief both hit the disenchanter, which was cool, you know. The next round, the disenchanter immediately ruined the cleric's mace of disruption. The group immediately fled. They had precious few magic items left, and they were afraid to lose any more. As I recall, the group had a portable hole that was carrying all their treasure. If the thing had got a hold of that, holy crap, you know. When you get a chance, read up on disenchanters. They can really, really piss off a group of players, but as the Old Warlock pointed out, they can be quite useful for a dungeon master. I hadn't thought of it like that, but yeah, they can be very, very useful. Be careful how you use them, because if a group has a specific item that they need to further your campaign, a disenchanter can ruin that as well. So just be aware. Disenchanters are They're just mean. It's just mean to run one of those against them. That's all I'm saying. Mold. I started playing Dungeons and Dragons back in the 70s. I started running it in 79. I still run it today with my family. In my opinion, first edition Advanced Dungeons and Dragons is the best version because of its flavor. But that's my opinion. I mean, if you enjoy later editions, more power to you. I'm just saying I like AD&D. I like doing these monster videos to give dungeon masters ideas of how to make their games better. So here we go. Mold. Molds of this type are one of the most insidious monsters a dungeon master can put against their players. Molds are on page 71 of the monster manual. Be sure to read up on them very, very thoroughly. They're kind of tricky. You got to understand them, so make sure you read up on them 2-3 times, take notes, that kind of thing. There are two basic types, yellow and brown. Generally, yellow is the more common type. A victim must make contact with a yellow mold to be affected, and it does like a D8 damage per contact. If the contact is rough, for example, a fumble in combat that hits the wall, or a missed arrow or a bolt that impacts the mold, then there's a 50-50 chance that the mold releases a spore or gas cloud, a cloud of spores. And this cloud will kill everyone in the area if a save versus poison is failed. So if they're way over there and you shoot it and an arrow and it hits the wall and the gas cloud's over there, that's cool. But if you're in melee combat, it'll affect everybody. You see what I'm saying? Because you're right there on it. You fail your saving throw and this stuff kills you. So yellow molds are quite nasty. Fire and light are best to use against a yellow mold. They like the dark and they like the cool temperatures. Fire is good against it. Rarely, when colonies of at least 300 feet are formed, there is a 1 in 6 chance that the yellow mold will form a collective intelligence with psionics. You got to read up on that part. Oh my lord, this thing can get dangerous if it becomes intelligent. I'm just saying. Now we're going to talk about my favorite kind, the brown mold. Brown mold is just nasty. It is far less common, but is in my opinion far more insidious. It grows in the dark and is light tan to golden brown. In other words, it blends into the surrounding rock. This mold absorbs heat, doing damage in the process. In narrow corridors and passages 5 to 8 foot wide, this mold can be deadly. This mold absorbs body heat, doing 1 to 8 points of damage for every 10 degrees of body heat over 55 degrees. Human body heat is 98 degrees Fahrenheit. That's a difference of 43 degrees. That's 4d8 frost damage per round for a single human. And if that player character has a torch, it will grow exponentially down the hall or the corridor or the passage, which makes it even longer, more time to get through. There are more rounds to take damage. God forbid the player character wizard uses a fire spell to burn the mold away. Fire is a favorite among player characters, as we all know. Fireballs, burning hands, that kind of thing. Heat makes this thing grow, so a fireball will put the players in a world of hurt. I'm just saying. The cold effects, different cold spells, the cone of cold, that kind of thing, are useful against it. The most insidious part of this is that absorbing heat like it does, the area is very cold. The way you combat cold is to build a big fire, which grows the mold. You see what I'm saying? Now, I have a funny story about this. Years ago, I was running a game. My 9 player characters were in an underground cavern searching for a treasure. They were narrow corridors, narrow passages, and I rolled randomly and determined that a brown mold was in that section of the passage. These were fairly high level characters. I figured that they would understand and do something different. The player characters all noticed the cold, so they pulled their cloaks tighter and lit torches. The damage that they took was ignored. As they continued on, the heat of the torches grew the mold ahead of them. They never thought to look for a source of the chill. They thought it was just natural. When they camped that night, they made a huge fire because they wanted to keep warm. Basically, they all froze to death that night. 9 10th and 11th level player characters frozen dead by a brown mold on the wall that they themselves grew. The players were pissed until I pointed out that they were taking damage from the cold and they never bothered to find the source. They just thought it was naturally cold. When I let them read about the brown mold in the book, they all felt stupid, and rightly so. I'd mentioned the cold multiple times. I stated specifically, I wrote notes to every player character who was taking damage, of all of them. This is what you're doing, boom, this is how much damage you take. It's very cold. The cold is numbing and chilling. It's actually burning you. The cold is burning you. It's so cold. Here's the thing, and over and over and over. Nobody bothered to check why. As a dungeon master, do not run a mold against your players unless you are fairly certain they won't ignore a damage source as natural and chalk it up to, OL. That type of a player character is a happy meal for a mold. No matter how you look at it, these characters, these players, should have done something different. Well, hell, it's cold in here. Let's find out why. We can't find out why. Okay. It's just cold and cold and cold. Hell, let's get out of here. That kind of thing. It's no sin to turn mother's picture to the wall and run like hell. Okay, that's called survival. These guys didn't do that. They continued on, and they found out what was going on the hard way. And they all had to make up new characters. Now, that's insidious, I know, but that's the nature of the mold. The Slithering Tracker. I started playing Dungeons & Dragons back in the 70s. I started running it in 79. I still run it today with my family. In my opinion, Advanced Dungeons & Dragons has the best flavor of all the different versions. The later ones have better artwork. The later versions, 3.5 and 4 and 5 and all, they have nice artwork. But other than that, that's about it. I mean, Advanced Dungeons & Dragons literally has them all beat for flavor. That being said, no matter what version you run, whatever you're doing, enjoy yourself. It's a game. It's supposed to be fun. All right? Now, this is for the Dungeon Masters. If you're the type of a Dungeon Master who enjoys screwing with your players, then look no further than the Slithering Tracker. If you can find this monster on page 88 of the Advanced Dungeons & Dragons Monster Manual. Read through it very thoroughly before you decide to use it in your game. The most insidious thing about this critter, in my opinion, is the fact that it is intelligent. It has an average intelligence of equivalent to a human of 8 to 10 intelligence. It's not stupid or animalistic. It's not a genius, but it's not stupid. Okay? Couple that with its transparent state, and it can sneak better than most thieves, especially in the dark of the dungeons where it inhabits. This thing lives pretty much underground, and it's transparent, and it's intelligent. Okay? Whenever a group of player characters is walking through an underground setting, if they are spotted by one of these slithering trackers, there's a 90% chance that it's likely to follow them instead of just outright attack. And it follows until they go to sleep. It follows along and hides and everything until they set up camp and they go to sleep. Now, once they go to sleep, this thing attaches itself in the dark and drains all of the blood plasma from them in 6 turns. That's 1 hour. It's not measured in hit points, it's measured in blood plasma. Okay? When it attaches itself to the skin, the victim must save versus paralyzation or be paralyzed. So if you're asleep, this thing attaches, you fail your save, you're laying there. You can't do anything. Everybody's asleep. If you're the guard that's on duty, because most player characters post a guard, if you're a guard on duty and this thing attaches itself to you and you fail your save, everybody's screwed. Because you're paralyzed, you're going to die in an hour, and I can't really think of a way out of it unless you can do something psionically, you know. Once it's done with a guard, if it's smart enough to go after the guard first, then it starts going after the players. And it's just nasty. 1 hour later, your character dies, make up a new one. Years ago, I was playing in my friend Randy's game. Randy is an excellent dungeon master, and he runs a really great game. Our group of 5 player characters were moving through a dungeon in search of a runaway criminal. This guy had escaped from... He'd committed a crime. They put him in jail, and they were transferring him. He escaped and ran off, and they hired us to go get him. Because as he escaped, he killed the sheriff, as it were, the law enforcer person. I forget what he was called, but anyway, Randy had a weird name for it. But anyway, the point being, he ran off, and they didn't have anybody to go after him, so they hired us, bounty hunters. So we went after him. So we're going through this dungeon, this underground cavern system, in search of this guy, and it got, we'd been down there a while, so we set up camp for the night, and it all seemed well. Unfortunately, a slithering tracker had followed us for most of the day. One by one, our players failed paralyzation saves, and the tracker sucked 3 of us dry. And I was one of them. I died. Finally, my friend Jesse made his savings throw, and he woke up. He and my other friend Kevin managed to kill it. I and 2 of our other player characters died. This is not a knock on anybody's playing ability. These slithering trackers are virtually invisible. They're intelligent. And they hide in the dark. How do you defend that? You can have a guard on duty, but it's invisible and it hides in the dark. And it's smart enough to sneak up. I mean, I've seen 8th and 10th and 12th level thieves with lower intelligence than 10. They don't play well, but by virtue of luck or whatever, they've gotten that high a level. I've seen thieves with lower intelligence. It's not good, but, there it is. These things are deadly. That's the insidious nature of a slithering tracker. It waits until the victim is asleep and vulnerable, then it paralyzes them and kills them. One of my favorite arguments from a player character back in the day was, he can't get me, I can't get through my armor. So you're sleeping in your armor. What kind of armor you got? Oh, I got plate mail. Nobody with half a brain sleeps in plate mail. It just doesn't work. Nobody with half a brain sleeps in any kind of metal armor. Leather armor is iffy at best. My contention there is there's plenty of flesh for this thing to glom onto. And once it does, you make or fail your save, and that's all she wrote. You fail your save, you're done. Because nobody knows you're paralyzed. You're not moving, you're not making noises, you're just laying there. This thing sucks you dry. It only takes an hour. If you sleep for 8 hours, because your spellcasters have to have 8 hours of rest to get spells, if you sleep for the 8 hours, that thing can kill 8 player characters in that time. If say he has to sneak up and avoid the guard and blah 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 blah, he can kill 7. This thing can kill 7 player characters in one campsite at one campsite. It's crazy. If you get a chance as a dungeon master, read up on the slithering tracker. I wouldn't recommend using it unless you're absolutely sure your player characters have some sort of a defense against paralyzation. Some way to defend themselves. But it's tough, folks. Oh my lord, it's tough. One of my favorite creatures to use against a group of players. The creature is the Lurker Above. I do these videos to give the less experienced dungeon masters out there ideas to challenge their players, to help make their game a little more inventive, a little more variety in the game, that kind of thing. And again, I'm not saying this is how you have to do it. I'm saying these are options that you use, and I've found they work pretty well. All right. The Lurker Above is one of those monsters you don't want to use in your game unless you really feel that your players can handle it. The Lurker Above is found on page 62 of the Monster Manual, AD&D Monster Manual. Be sure to read through it very thoroughly before you use it in your game. These things have a buoyancy factor, and they can flap like wings, so essentially they can fly. So just be aware, okay? These things are found in underground, cavernous settings. They work better in areas that have been built rather than our natural caves. But they can work in natural caves as well. These things wait up around the ceiling of any chamber. In the dark, it resembles a section of the ceiling. Now, if it's a built area, like people have gone in and carved out a tunnel, this thing works better up there because it can look like part of the ceiling. Natural caverns, it might not be as easy for this thing to look like the ceiling. So just keep that in mind. Unless a player character specifically states that they are checking out the ceiling, they will probably not even notice that it's there. Surprise is one of the Lurker's very, very biggest advantages. This thing does a d6 damage per round because it just drops on them, but it also suffocates its prey within 2 to 5 rounds. So the damage that it does is not a lot. It's a d6 per round, but the real danger is where it suffocates the player characters. Player characters have to have had a small weapon in hand in order to fight back. And here's the key part. The real danger of this creature is all it takes is one mistake. Once it lands on the group, if it gets them all, fighting back is very, very difficult, and only works if a player character had a small weapon in hand. Most player characters only carry large weapons in hand: spears, battle axes, polearms, etc., opting to wear the smaller weapons in scabbards and such. A short sword in a scabbard while you carry your battle axe, a dagger in your scabbard while you carry your spear. You see what I'm saying? That kind of thing. The modus operandi of this beast takes full advantage of that. If they're holding a spear and this thing lands on them, they can't fight back. They're going to lay there and suffocate. If they're holding a battle axe, same thing. If they're holding a dagger in their hand and this thing lands on them, they can fight back. See what I'm saying? And at least they have a chance. I was running a thief back in the day, and I was walking point for a group of 6 5th level characters. I never bothered to check out the ceiling in the section of the passageway. I walked in, followed by the group, who trusted my experience. When the Lurker dropped on us, nobody was ready. My failure killed the entire party. That was my fault. And that's the thing. My character was holding a spear, so I couldn't fight back. Out of the rest of them, I think 2 of them had battle axes. One of them had something big. I want to say it was a polearm, a halberd, I think. Everybody else, the wizard he didn't have a weapon in hand. The cleric had I want to say it was a footman's mace, big heavy footman's mace. So he couldn't fight back. I mean, the point being, nobody could fight back. We lay there and suffocated. It was crazy. My failure in that scenario killed the entire party, and it was my fault. I freely admit it. Always have your player characters try to get them into the habit of always checking the ceilings. That way, later on, after you've stopped mentioning it for a while, you run in characters when they're first. You were checking around. Okay, you look over here, look over here. You look up in the ceiling, you don't see anything, but the next time, same thing. You look over here, you look over there, you look up in the ceiling. Okay. 8 or 10 times down the road, you stop saying that. You look around, you don't see anything. Or at that point, a few times after that, you start asking, where are you looking? Where are you looking specifically? And they're looking around most of the time, look up in the ceiling, and that's fine. Lurkers easily appear as part of the ceiling in a tooled area where it's carved out, or against the bricks set in the ceiling, that kind of thing. But or the tiles in the ceiling or whatever. But if you get them into the habit of most groups at some point will get into the lackadaisical habit, the lazy habit of just walking down the corridor. Well, guess what? That's where the lurker does his damage. I'm just saying. I'm not saying breed into them the idea that they don't need to check the ceiling. That's not what I'm saying. Let them come to that on their own. That's all I'm saying. And most player characters, when they're checking for traps, look up in the ceiling to start out with. But if there's never anything up there, eventually they'll get out of that habit. The little devious tricks like that for a dungeon master. The Piercer. I do these videos to try and help out the less experienced dungeon masters to make help them to try to make their games better and more imaginative, more enjoyable. And towards that end, you got to have quality monsters. That's all there is to it. Dungeons and Dragons are great, but a little variety is nice. Variety is the spice of life. So here we go. The Piercer. Piercers are one of the more devious monsters that any dungeon master can put in their game, especially they have to be in an underground setting, a natural cave formation. It can't be where somebody carved a mine or somebody carved a fortress underground or something. It can't be in an inhabited place. It's got to be a natural underground cavern with stalactites. The Piercer is on page 78 of the Monster Manual. Be sure to read up on the critter very, very thoroughly before you use it in your game. Knowing about it will help you make the game better. the encounter better. The Piercer hides among stalactites in the roof of a cave. They are indistinguishable from them. When a living creature passes below it, the Piercer just lets go and drops on it. It has a 95% chance for surprise and can do considerable damage. You might think that a group of player characters won't have too much trouble killing a single Piercer, and you would be right. But here's the rub. Piercers travel in groups of 3 to 18. A group of 6 player characters can be outnumbered as much as 3 to 1. Regardless, Piercers are great to use against those overconfident or stupid players that insist on splitting the party. Excuse me a moment. I drank coffee. I got a tickle in my throat for some reason. Anyway, people, when a party decides, half you go this way and half you go that way, that's where the Piercer really shines. 2 or 3 player characters become happy meals to these Piercers. The smaller the group, the better. The largest Piercers weigh in at 500 pounds. So dislodging one from a fellow player character will be exceedingly difficult at best. There's rules in the books about how much a character can lift, depending on their strength and other factors. The issue that we have there is once a Piercer is inside somebody's body, they're trying to eat them at the same time. So, all in all, Piercers can give any size group some serious problems. But here's the kicker. When they split the party, the Piercers can really outnumber the players. So, I think that's where they shine. That's how I have found that they work best. Years ago, I had a party searching through caverns for lost treasure. 2 of my players were always running off by themselves. Excuse me. This time, they didn't return. So by morning, when the other 4 players went to look for them, the Piercers finished off the entire party, because instead of having 6 players to deal with, they killed 2 and then they only had 4. You see what I'm saying? Divide and conquer kind of thing. It's not far-fetched, and for a DM it's not really hard to do. Piercers can be very, very effective. And again, the fact that these things look like stalactites and the roof is filled with stalactites, the roof of the cavern is filled with stalactites. Most player characters don't think to look up there. I know I don't. I mean, you should, but I can understand why they don't. Because players whose characters spelunk a lot through underground caverns and things, you're looking for, bad guys. You're looking for traps. You're looking for this and that. You're looking for the monster that's over there behind that rock. You're not looking into the ceiling for something to drop on you. You see what I'm saying? It makes for an interesting campaign. An interesting encounter. Anyway, I hope this finds everybody well, and I hope these, and again, I'm not saying you have to do it this way. I'm saying I've played for a long time. In my games, I have my player characters are challenged, and they have a lot of fun fighting these critters, and this is what works in my game. If you find a better way, hey, use it. I'm not saying you have to do it my way. The Wretch Plant, R-E-T-C-H, Wretch Plant. I've been playing role-playing games for over 47 years. I've been running them since 1979. In all that time, I've seen some very powerful monsters, some insidious monsters, all manner of run-of-the-mill useful monsters. Dungeon Masters have a wide variety of varied and horrible monsters to call on to give their players a challenging and enjoyable time. One of the most deadly monsters you can use is the monster that seems innocent and innocuous, but can be extremely deadly. Enter the Wretch Plant. Wretch Plant, also called a globe palm, can be found on page 106 of the Advanced Dungeons & Dragons Monster Manual 2. It is found only in warm climates and appears to be a typical palm tree, except that the fruit at the top is not your standard coconuts. Instead, they are taut membranous globes of blue, violet, or lilac in color. These globes fall on passing creatures, whereupon they burst. Their nauseating fluid splashes over a 5-foot radius. There's a 25% chance of splash contact at a 5 to 9 foot distance, so it can saturate the ground beneath it pretty good. This splash fluid causes victims to retch and vomit for 3 rounds. Furthermore, the victims will be at 50% normal strength for 6 turns. There's no save for any of this. It automatically happens. So, all they've got to do is walk through the area. Now, if this is not bad enough, the real insidious part is that splashed creatures are twice as likely to attract carnivores in the area. That's double the frequency of checks with double the probability of encounter. This fluid attracts things that want to eat them. Take note of the procedure that's absolutely necessary to wash the fluid off of victims. If they don't do it, they're attracting all kinds of stuff. Another thing to consider is that there are from 2 to 20 of these plants in any given area. So it's pretty certain and pretty certainly feasible that an entire area will be bathed in this fluid. Take note of what triggers the globes to fall. It's all in there. So you got to read up on that. Read up on these innocuous looking plants very thoroughly before you use them in your game. Years ago, a friend of mine was playing in a game with 5 other player characters. He told me about this story. They ran into a group of these trees, and none of their characters had ever heard of them before. They had absolutely no idea what was going on. They were all doused with the fluid from the globes and had no idea how to wash it off properly. It became a nightmare for them. Over the next 2 days, packs of wolves, bears, mountain lions, and other regular predators picked them off and ate them because the fluid attracted them. My friend his character was eaten by a mountain lion. The retching and having your strength reduced for a period of time is bad enough, But imagine suddenly all the wolves in the area go, oh, look, dinner, and they all come running. And the mountain lions and the bears and the tigers and blah, 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 whatever else, whatever other carnivores are in the area come running. And by the way, it's not just the regular stuff, because dragons eat meat too. Any kind of a carnivore, you know what I'm saying, can be attracted by these things. The critter that killed them wasn't the predators; it was the trees that they camped under. They ended up camping in an area, and next thing you know, the whole area is bathed in this stuff. And over the next few days, the local predators got them because they were attracted to that stuff. These guys didn't know how to wash the fluid off. Monsters like this are insidious. I love them as a dungeon master. I love them because very few times have you ever... I've never run into one of these things, but I had a friend who did, and he explained it to me. And then I looked it up and read it for myself. These things are insidious because they'll get you killed without actually killing you. Cat Lord. For all of you folks out there who love cats, and I'm right there with you, cats are the epitome of independence. They want what they want it on their terms, even affection, and it's long been my belief that people do not own cats, cats own people. This particular video is about the Cat Lord. The Cat Lord is the epitome of a cat ruler. He is the closest thing cats have to a deity, and this is all manner of felines. He cares for nothing except cat things, as per the book. What those cat things are defy explanation, as cats are finicky and standoffish, so are they varied and whimsical. Cat things could literally be anything. He could show up and wreck your entire campaign, or he could show up and save the day. Who knows? Cat Lord has only one friend aside from cats, and that is the deity Xanye, Xanyae. Cat Lord can be found on pages 22 and 23 of the Advanced Dungeons & Dragons Monster Manual 2. And there's a lot of stuff that goes along with him, so I'm going to try to just briefly cover it. When player characters encounter the Cat Lord, chances are it will be in feline form. Now, there's only one Cat Lord. This is not a race of beings. This is the one deity that the cats, the leader of the cats, as it were. If they encounter him on the prime-material plane, chances are it'll be in feline form. He can assume feline form at will and can summon powerful feline allies in either form. You got to read up on his abilities very thoroughly before you use him in your game as a dungeon master, because he could make or break your campaign very, very easily. Note, there should be a significant reason for him to make an appearance in your game. If a player character or group of player characters has to kill a few lions who attack them, this is probably not a sufficient reason. Now, should your players, for whatever reason, make a concerted and concentrated effort to eliminate all felines, or even a specific type of feline, like all lions or all tigers or all leopards or whatever, then certainly the Cat Lord will sit up and take notice. And I'm going to tell you now, this is one guy your player characters do not want to be on the wrong side of. One of the most dangerous aspects of Cat Lord is his ability to spit, which will blind an opponent. And if that doesn't work, he has improved invisibility and his yowl. Y-O-W-L, yowl. Improved invisibility allows the Cat Lord to attack while invisible and remain invisible. Furthermore, his yowl stuns all non-feline creatures within a 19-foot radius. Such stunned creatures cannot move, cannot attack, and cannot defend for 1 to 4 rounds. To me, as a dungeon master, that pretty well equates to being prone. Prone targets are ripe for the kill. All you have to do is not fumble to kill somebody if they're prone. Also, take note that his armor class is -9. He's very, very difficult to hit under the best of conditions. Cat Lord has a plethora of other abilities listed in the book. Be sure to read through them thoroughly. He freely roams the astral and ethereal planes, as well as the prime material plane.
He always moves with 99% silence, so along with his improved invisibility I discussed previously, chances are that most player characters won't even know he is there when he strikes. If he starts off with a yowl, it's very possible that the player characters will never know he's there before he stuns them and murders them all while they're helpless. Bottom line, very, very bottom line, is that should your player characters ever piss this guy off, it's very possible that he could kill them all and they would be helpless to stop him. They may very well not even know who killed them or why. Be very careful how or when you use this guy in your game. He could enact a total party kill very, very easily. This guy is built for total party kills. Okay? Again, your party's walking down a tunnel or a cavern or through the woods or whatever, and they hear this weird yowl. Everybody falls down. Next thing you know, their throats are being slit, and they have no idea why. That could literally happen in the game. So be very careful how you use this guy. Make sure there's a sufficient reason, and drop hints to your players beforehand. Because if not, you're going to have a lot of pissed off players on your hands. That's all. The Mimic. I've been playing Advanced Dungeons & Dragons for over 45 years, and in all that time, one of the most effective monsters I've ever run against or used in any of my games is the Mimic. Mimics can be found in the Advanced Dungeons & Dragons Monster Manual 1 on page 70. Be sure to read up on it very thoroughly before you use it in your game. They can be very formidable opponents for your players, but they can also stab you in the back and kind of bite you in the ass if you don't use them properly. And you'll see why. There are basically two kinds. There's the intelligent and the killer mimics. The intelligent kind are smaller but can be reasonable if approached with food. The intelligent mimics will even be friendly and may offer information. They can bite you in the ass. They can offer information of what it has seen in the area. They speak several languages, including their own. Usually Common and Elven and some of the more standard languages. The larger killer mimics will attack if touched. They can be quite formidable. Luckily, mimics tend to travel alone, so there's only going to be like one of them. Now, the most dangerous aspect of a mimic is that it poses as any innocuous object common in a generic dungeon or cavern or whatever. They pose as doors, stonework, chests, chairs, tables, altars, walls, etc. And they can appear as stone or wood. So they're very, very they're very capable at disguising themselves. Very adept. How many times has the thief in the group jumped at the chance to pick a lock or check for traps? We all know the big fighter or barbarian who can't wait to kick the door in and go kill everything inside. Clerics cannot wait to examine ancient altars or stone tablets. Wizards cannot wait to search the evil mage's workshop with tables, loaded with boxes and alchemical gear. Every character class is vulnerable to a mimic, especially a killer mimic. The smaller mimics, like I said, they can be reasonable, but they will attack if you touch them. But if you know it's the mimic and you approach it with food or whatever, say the thief goes and messes with it and gets attacked and he retreats, and then you go up later, hey, we'll give you food if you'll give us information. They can be reasonable. A killer mimic will just kill everything in the area because they're hungry. Years ago, my friend Larry was running a game, and there were 5 of us playing. I was running the wizard in the group. Our thief, Bob, was one of those players who cannot wait to sneak off and find treasure on his own, so he can pocket the choice items. The fighter in the group, and this predated the Unearthed Arcana, so the fighter in the group kind of acted more like a barbarian, and he couldn't wait to go kick a door in. That was his thing. So we were spelunking and found a dungeon and began the iconic dungeon crawl. We went a while and we made camp. The thief was on guard duty, and true to form, he snuck off to search ahead. He ended up finding a chest. He tried to pick the lock, and the mimic ate him. Later on, the fighter, and for the life of me, I cannot remember the player's name. It's been years. Like I said, it predated the Unearthed Arcana, so, early 80s at the latest. Later on, this fighter, and he woke up and decided to go search for the thief. He found a room with bloodstains on the floor and a solid oaken door in the wall. He tried to kick the door in, and the mimic ate him. Word to the wise, never, never, never split the party. This is a classic example of why you should always stick together. Mimics are always found underground as they cannot stand sunlight. So, if necessary, your group can withdraw into a sunlit area, and it's unlikely that the mimic will pursue. A group of players who are together when the mimic is revealed have a much better time than, fighting this thing than one player by himself, or, a couple of players. So, it's always better never to split the party. You always want to stick together. That being said, you always have those players who want to get a little ahead, want to get a little edge on everybody. They want to scout ahead or do whatever. And those are the ones who usually end up dying. It's just the way it is. Mimics, in these cases, are so much fun because you get to play a creature that is either intelligent or a bloodthirsty eating machine who can disguise itself. Either way, they are just so damn much fun. Read up on them thoroughly before you use them. Make sure that they fit the situation and your world. But you're going to have so much fun putting one of these in your game, I promise. The Displacer Beast. I'm still getting over a cold, so bear with my voice, but we're going to get on with this video. One of the more annoying monsters available in Dungeons & Dragons to run against a group of players is the Displacer Beast. For some reason, Dungeon Masters love the hell out of it, and I gotta admit to using them a lot in my games as well. These creatures can be found on page 28 of the Monster Manual. As always, read up on them very, very thoroughly before you use them in your game. Displacer Beasts always run in packs from 2 to 5 creatures, making them difficult to deal with under the best of circumstances. They will give a significant challenge to any group of player characters of moderate to low level. If the beasts outnumber such a group, it's probably best for the player characters to retreat. If the numbers are equal or favor the player characters, there should be a good chance for the player characters to win. Note the special displacement defense of the creatures. They can be very, very difficult to hit, especially in dark areas. I can see a villainous wizard or cleric using these creatures to guard a walled-in area, such as a courtyard or some other such enclosure. They make excellent guards because of just the hellish appearance of these creatures is enough to send most interlopers packing. I have a good story to illustrate this. Years ago, I was playing in my friend Randy's game. There were 6 players, all of us 2nd and 3rd level. Our group had decided to rob a local tower. The tower was rumored to house a wizard and apparently had vast amounts of treasure stored there. So, of course, we were interested. Now, keep in mind, this is a long time ago. This is when Dungeons & Dragons first started. It was more of the, okay, your characters meet in a tavern and decide to adventure together, and you head north. Here you go. Here's the adventure, There wasn't a lot of thought process in it. But Randy, when he did his games, he was a little ahead of the curve. He required plot. He required a storyline. Our characters weren't really well developed, but his storyline was, because this particular adventure played into the larger part of his campaign later on. Randy's one of the best dungeon masters that I know. Again, our group had decided to rob this tower and, supposedly had a lot of treasure in it. We were good to go. We had 2 fighters and a barbarian, along with a thief, a cleric, and a wizard. And we were, we thought we were badass. We really did. We had chips on our shoulder. We were ready to go kill something. Our thief, when we got to the tower, our thief went over the wall in the dead of night with the intent of opening the gate for us. Well, and in the game, after 45 minutes of waiting, it was several minutes, but in the game time, it was like 45 minutes of nothing. We figured he was either long gone with heaps of treasure or he was dead. This did not dissuade us. We were not put off by this. The barbarian and my fighter forced the gate open, and we entered. The barbarian and my fighter were in the lead, followed by the cleric and wizard. The last fighter brought up the rear. When we reached the main door of the tower, the last fighter was nowhere to be seen. While the barbarian and my fighter worked to get the door open, the wizard and the cleric were snatched away into the darkness. Their screams alerted us to the danger. At that point, we figured it was time to beat feet, and we ran for the gate. The 3 displacer beasts met us before we made it that far. And that's where we died. We had to make up new characters and continue the campaign from there, but that tower figured prominently in the game. In the darkened areas, or at least at night, these beasts are exceedingly dangerous because they blend. Displacer beasts are ridiculously nasty in dark areas. Plus, they have a feline's agility and quiet stealth. Our thief was dead when he hit the ground inside the wall. The rest of us were picked off. The 2 of us at the end, we fought well, but it was 3-2, and we didn't have a chance to run. Those displacer beasts feasted well that night, let me tell you. So if you get a chance, check out displacer beasts. Maybe they're going to work in your game. Your players will really enjoy running up against them, let me tell you.
Gryphs. Gryphs are one of the more insidious creatures a dungeon master can use. They appear on pages 48 and 49 of the Advanced Dungeons & Dragons Fiend Folio. I suggest you read through the description in the book very, very carefully before you use them in your game. These things can be quite unnerving, I guess, for a lot of players. Now, individually, the males are not overly impressive. They can attack with surprise reasonably well, and they can do good damage reasonably well. However, they only have 2 to 4 hit dice and an armor class of 6. A reasonable party of player characters level 2 or higher should have little trouble dispatching them. They attack at high speed from shadows, so they can get in a good hit with surprise. Other than that, they don't have a whole lot going for them. However, the real trouble comes when 3 or more of these creatures are encountered. The number appearing is 1 to 6, so there's a 2/3 chance that at least 3 will be encountered, probably more. If 3 or more of these are present, one of them will be a female. And there's a 35% chance that she will be ready to lay eggs. And if that's the case, she will attempt to lay her eggs by injecting them into the victim's bloodstream. And the procedure for that is right there in the book. It's pretty simple. There's a tube, like a injection tube from her belly. It's just crazy. If these eggs are injected into the bloodstream of the victim, if these things survive, they will hatch in 1 to 3 days. This kills the victim immediately and releases baby gryphs. The victims will experience abdominal pain and swelling, and it will start with a slight discomfort and increase to sheer agony right before the babies erupt. Think the movie Alien. Yeah. In order to kill the eggs inside a victim, there are several methods. We got cure disease, dispel evil, and a properly used wish spell. That'll do it. But any of those 3 will work. Cure disease, dispel evil, or a wish spell. But you got to use the wish spell properly. An effective dungeon master will, by the book, twist that crap. So, just got to be careful with that. Now, I'm doing this video because a friend of mine reminded me of a game we played years ago. The dungeon master was my good friend Kevin. Kevin was an excellent player and an awesome dungeon master. I really miss him. He was a good guy. Our party of 4 had been attacked by a group of 6 gryphs. Now we were running 6 level player characters, so we killed them pretty easily.
Kevin immediately started passing notes around. Now that's the insidious part of the Dungeon Master. Kevin was great. He started passing notes around, and most of them were innocuous things like, you notice a silver coin on the floor of the cave, there's a foul smell from up ahead. To all the players, everybody got a note. But nothing was too disturbing. However, we all got these notes. What nobody realized was that the wizard in our group, played by my friend Greg, had a different note. His note was something like, you feel the discomfort in your stomach. A later round of notes the next day in game time followed. Greg's note was something like, you have a stomach ache and there's a bit of bloating. Now on the third day, we all got notes again. Greg's wizard collapsed to the ground and his stomach exploded, releasing 3 baby griffs. Greg never bothered to mention it to us, nor did he do anything about it himself. His wizard died, and it was his fault. He didn't say anything. We had a cleric in the group who could have fixed it, but he didn't say anything. Again, 1 or 2 of these things are no big deal. 3 or more can be devastating, because all the female who's getting ready to lay eggs, all she has to do is hit. And she injects her eggs into the bloodstream of the victim, and nobody's the wiser. If the victim doesn't say anything, nobody's the wiser. And that, by the way, I'm going to take this opportunity to stress in any party, communication among the group. There's a tendency for a lot of players, especially the secretive ones that want to be the big hero all the time and collect all the treasure for themselves, where they pass a lot of notes and they keep everything secret from the rest of the party. It works out well until you're the one needing help. If the cleric doesn't know you're sick, he won't know to try to heal you. And if he doesn't heal you and you die, that's on you. That's the player's fault who didn't say anything. Oh my God, my stomach hurts. Guess what? That's on you, man. Greg was an experienced player who basically did a dumb thing. It happens to everybody. Brain farts happen to everyone, and in Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, they can be deadly. In this case, it was more than a brain fart. Greg should have said something. If you're say the Griffs aren't even involved, and you get attacked by orcs, and the orcs hack your fighter down to from 50 points down to 2. Say something. The cleric won't heal you if you don't ask for it. He doesn't. If the cleric's running around saying, "Okay, I'm going to heal. I'm going to keep track of these people. You got hit pretty bad. I'm going to heal you." No, it's not his job. His job is to heal, but you have to say something. If you're not saying, "Hey, I need help," he's not going to help you. Duh. Running your characters up against a griff will cement the idea that maybe the players need to communicate. That it will cement that into your team, into your players. So maybe that's not a bad thing.